Using your crock pot in the summer is absolutely one of the best methods of cooking. I know that we think about crock pot a lot during the winter and the fall, and it's great for that season too. But if you don't have to heat up your whole oven, heating up your whole kitchen, causing your air conditioner to run even more, that's even better in my book. Tonight, we are gonna use our crock pot, and we are going to make a slow cooker balsamic chicken. The recipe actually calls for Roma tomatoes, but I found these the other day at Trader Joe's, and I just figured we'd go ahead and give these a shot. These are Campari tomatoes, so they're small and round. They're more the size of Roma, maybe a little smaller actually than Roma tomatoes. And we're just gonna rough chop these. I'll probably use all of them. I might as well, because I really bought these I bought them like 6 days ago. You know how you have every intention of making a recipe and then 6 days later you make that one? That's kind of how this one is. All right, so I am just going to cut these up into, I don't know, it's not like I don't have a precise measurement here, but maybe 1/2 inch diced pieces. It doesn't have to be perfect. So tell me what ouch. I'm gonna try and ask this question again. What is your weather like right now where you are? Are you in the hot season yet? Are you feeling the effects of the heat? Are you not quite there, just depending on where you live? At least as far as I can see on the weather app that I use, because it shows you 10 days out, having rain for the next 10 days. 10. It's not my favorite to have rain that much, although I'm very thankful for the rain because obviously we need it. That means we get no outdoor activities right now, and that's not my favorite. We're gonna add about 2 garlic cloves. About good. Maybe I'll do a little bit more. We like garlic. And about 3 tablespoons, maybe a little less because we did go with a little less of the tomatoes, but we're adding this balsamic vinegar. Why did I not leave that spoon out? See, this is what I talk about, guys. I think I'm done with a tool. I'm never done with it. We're gonna add in some olive oil. We need maybe 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons-ish. All depends on really how many tomatoes you have. And then let's add a couple pinches of salt. Really bring out the awesome flavor of those tomatoes. We're going to put some of this at the bottom of the slow cooker. Maybe just a couple scoops. And then I'm gonna get some of the liquid as well. I am going to be using chicken breasts. Now, let me tell you, in the crock pot, I almost never prefer chicken breasts. However, we're gonna try this one with chicken breasts, but I'll let you know at the end whether or not I think you should make it with thighs. That's just a preference of ours. We generally think that the thighs are better in the crock pot. They don't really overcook quite as easily, so that ends up being the issue. Is I feel like a lot of times chicken breasts will dry out in the crock pot. We're gonna see how it goes. All right, you guys have seen this before. In general, I do like to cut our chicken breasts in half this way, and I just feel like it's just, I don't know, but we just like them better that way. They're a little thinner, they're not as big. All right, so we're just gonna lay these in there just like so that we have them in the crock pot. This stuff can get to the sink. Let me just do a little quick cleanup before we move on. We're gonna take a little bit more of that tomato mixture. That's gonna go on top of the chicken. I'm not going to actually touch the chicken with my spoon because some of this is going to get reserved for serving the chicken, and so I don't want cross-contamination with the raw chicken. Okay, so we're just saving a little bit really, just to make it pretty for serving. This can go in our crock pot insert, and it's gonna cook on high for 4 hours or for low for about 6 hours. I'm gonna go for the low option. I don't think that it's gonna take quite that long because I cut the chicken breast in half. So with that said, we're gonna start low. I'm gonna see how this works, and then we may crank it up to high if we need to. It is currently 5:38, and this is completely done cooking, and I did not crank up the heat. So we cooked it on low for what, 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes or so. So honestly, it really doesn't need that amount of time. that we thought that it was gonna need. Now, I'm gonna do something a little extra with this recipe that you don't necessarily have to do, but I do think that it's, I don't know, it adds just a different texture. We are going to take a spoon and just take out some of the tomato mixture. I don't want a ton of juice, but I do want enough that it's gonna help to puree it. Okay, now some of this we are going to leave for serving just the way that it is. Some of it we're gonna remove. There's a lot of liquid in here and we just don't need quite that much. I'm gonna take my sad basil plant, my very sad basil plant, and just take off a few leaves and put these in here. The rest of them I'm gonna also chop up as well. But we're going to just blend this and kind of make a sauce, I guess that you can say. Now let's take this chicken out. I should wear an apron when I do this. Now my crock pot does tend to be hot. So, I mean, this thing is ancient. It's definitely 20 years old. So I don't know, some of the newer ones you may actually need to cook stuff longer, but this thing really, it's been around for a while. I am gonna get rid of some of the liquid that's in here. It's quite a bit, we just don't need quite this much. We're gonna put this shredded chicken back in. Also, my finger was not hurting that bad earlier when I actually cut it. Now, it's hurting a bit more. Mix that in, let it soak up the liquid that's in there. And we're gonna pour this over the top and just mix that up. And then when we're ready to eat, this will be ready to serve. It's completely ready now. We're just not quite ready to eat yet. So probably 30 minutes or so. We're gonna serve this over rice. I've got my tomato mixture here. I'm gonna use the rest of my poor basil, and then we're gonna have to buy a new basil plant. And if my friend Diana's watching, she is laughing right now because the number of times that she has told me to just grow basil outside. And then I always end up going on Instagram and asking for advice how to grow basil. And she will respond and say outside. Her basil is always perfect, you guys. It's always huge. This is what mine always looks like. So you would think I would just take her advice. Just cutting this into ribbons. This is great because it will add some green, which is gonna be so nice. So like I said, we are serving this with rice. So I just put some rice in this bowl. I'm gonna serve the chicken on top of that. Take some of that tomato mixture and put that on the top. And that's just gonna add even more color and depth. Now, another thing that I would do, and I really thought I had it and apparently we're out, is that balsamic glaze. Now you can make one, you can make a balsamic reduction, but there's a glaze that you can buy and it's so easy to use, and you could just do some of this on the top and it would look so pretty. It would add a little bit more of that balsamic. I don't know what in the world. It must have expired and I threw it out. It was right in front of my face, literally right in front of my face. And there you go. It looks so pretty. Let's give it a taste. Good flavor. I think it needs a dash of salt. Did we put salt in this? We did put salt in this, but it needs a little bit more salt. The flavors are really good. The chicken thighs, in my opinion, would be delicious. They just, to me, have more flavor. But other than that, I think this is very good. It really does taste like a summer crock pot meal. It tastes fresh, and I really like this one. I think this is a great option. Not only is your crock pot fantastic for summer, but it's also really great for travel. So one thing that I love to do is I'll often check when we're going to a place if they have a crock pot already there. If not, it's just as easy to bring mine with me, because then we can still eat at home. We can still have a fantastic meal at home, but I don't have to worry about spending all evening in the kitchen or anything. I just throw everything into a crock pot that morning. We are actually headed up to the mountains tomorrow, so I wanted to show you that not only are we gonna be making some summer crock pot meals, but I'm prepping everything ahead. So yes, I could take all of my spices and all the things that I need with me, or I could just put everything into a baggie, and then when I get there, it's just dumping it all in the crock pot and it's ready to go. You're gonna see me prep everything here, and then when we get up there, you'll see that we're in a different location, but I'm literally just dumping it into the crock pot and then we'll assemble what we need. So the first thing that we're starting with here is a slow cooker or crock pot hot honey chicken. And for some reason, like this Nashville chicken or this hot honey, I am all about it right now. I think the flavors are phenomenal. You can make it as hot or as mild as you want, which I think is great. So we've got some different things that we're gonna put into this bag. I thought I had gallon size bags and I don't. So I'm hoping that I think these are quart size. I should mention, we're using 1 pound of chicken. So this is gonna get shredded and put onto buns. If you need to use more than that, feel free to do so. So I have about a little less than a teaspoon, maybe even closer to a half teaspoon of cayenne pepper, but go more. If you're using up to 2 pounds of chicken, you could use a tablespoon. It all depends on how hot you want this to be. Less cayenne equals less heat. And then over here, I've got some paprika, and that is 1 teaspoon. So let's go ahead and just dump those both into the bag. I also have some garlic salt that I made up. I don't have garlic salt already mixed together, but we've got garlic powder and salt, and I did about half and half so that we've come up to just under a teaspoon. We have 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. Let's go ahead and just dump that in. All of these really good spices. And then we're gonna add about a half cup of honey. I'm not gonna measure this one. This is just gonna be by sight, and this is one of those things that if you get a little more or a little less, it's okay. I have a half tablespoon of regular, just white vinegar. Let's pour that in. Okay, I'm just gonna slightly kind of mix this together. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna mix it all together in just a couple of minutes here. Smell that hot honey. I love this, you guys. You know what's really good is if you actually have hot honey, take your pizza crust and dip the crust into a little bit of hot honey. It's so good. Okay, we've got a little bit of a mix going on. Now I'm gonna take some chicken breasts. I'm gonna cut off the fat, and then the chicken breasts are gonna go right into this bag, and it's just gonna travel with us, which is so perfect. All right, I have trimmed the fat off of 2 large chicken breasts, and they're gonna go in this bag. I'm gonna put about an 1/8 cup of butter in there as well. So we have that available. The chicken can go in there. You don't have to trim the fat off of yours if that's not something that will bother you. I just can't deal with it. So we always trim the fat off. And then we're gonna seal up this bag. Let me wash my hands first. Now we can seal up the bag. I'm going to double bag it because it's gonna be traveling in a cooler, and I wanna just make sure that we don't have any issues. Now, depending on how many days it's gonna be until you actually make this recipe, you may wanna freeze it, you may wanna just put it in your fridge. However, you know, you don't even have to prep this ahead. You can throw all of this into the crock pot right now. It doesn't even need to go in a baggie. But obviously you guys know, I already said that we're gonna make this up at the mountains. All I have to do is take this with me as opposed to all the different spices that I had out. This is all going straight into the crock pot. I am gonna top it with a little bit more honey just because I brought it with me, and so I feel like that will add even more flavor. This is gonna cook on low for about 4 hours. Okay, this has been cooking on low for a little over 4 hours actually. Now we need to shred this up. You've got that sauce in there, you've got the chicken. It looks really good already. Now, if you have a hand mixer, you can actually just put the hand mixer, I've seen this happen anyway, directly into your crock pot and it will shred this up for you. I'm just using 2 forks because, like I said, we are at a different location than our house. So I am using the equipment that I have. I did bring this crock pot with us. I wasn't quite sure. She probably has a crock pot here, but I wasn't quite sure if there would be one. We've got this nice and shredded. I'm gonna leave this in here until we're ready to serve. Let's try it though. It's got really good flavor. I do think that we could have still added a little more heat, but you guys know I wanted to be careful on that. Couldn't find buns in the store. They actually just really didn't look good, any of the buns that were available. But we are gonna have ours in like pita pockets, and then I'm gonna cut up these little baby dill pickles that we can put on the sandwiches as well. Probably easier to do regular dill pickle slices, but this is what we had, and I figured let's just go ahead and use them up. Okay, so these are the pitas that I got, and I'm just gonna start prepping sandwiches. Here's my thought. We'll do a line of mayo, This is optional. I do think that this could actually be really good with some ranch or blue cheese too. Put some pickle in there. Obviously optional as well. Everything is optional, you guys know that. Change it up, make it the way you love it. Let's talk about this hot honey chicken. I did not try it on camera. We were up in the mountains and I wanted to do as little as possible, if I'm being honest. The flavors were really good, but it absolutely needed that mayo or a ranch or a blue cheese dressing, or maybe even some sort of coleslaw to go along the side, because it was a little bit dry with the addition of the pita bread. It might be totally different if you have it on a bun, but with the pita bread, we did all kind of feel like it was a little bit dry, and we thought, man, this would be so good if you had some sort of ranch or something. But the flavors were really good. I definitely didn't think it was too spicy. So if you want it more on the hot side of the hot honey, I would add a little bit more cayenne, because I personally think that that would have been really good. But the flavors, very, very good. And honestly, that dressing that we made up that went in the chicken, I'm gonna be making that because I think that would be great for a dipping sauce. One thing I actually really enjoy, regardless of the season, is meatloaf. But it seems like more of a fall winter food, and I think that's because you typically have to turn on the oven. But did you know that you can make meatloaf in your crock pot? Now, you can turn on the oven at the end and just put it under the broiler just to get like that nice little bit of, you know, crustiness on the top, but you don't have to. So I've got 1.5 pounds of ground beef here. I had a pound ready and then I just felt like that wasn't quite enough. So I went and bought an extra 1/2 pound. So you just use whatever amount you think is good for your family. Let's crack an egg. We're gonna have 1 egg in this. And just so you guys are aware, pretty much every single time I make meatloaf, I make it just a little bit different. So you don't have to follow a recipe exactly. This is one of those dash of this, dash of that recipes. So let's add in the egg. Also, to those of you that gave me the tip about the eggs in the garden, we've been saving our eggs. This is the second round that we've had, and we have been grinding them and putting in the garden. Now, I like to add in oatmeal. I usually go with about 1 cup. If you're not a fan of oatmeal, then add in your favorite breadcrumbs, panko, something like that. Also, I'm very sorry if you can hear, my kids are having a pillow fight upstairs. They asked if they could, and they're running around like crazy. So if you hear the feet, it's very loud. Okay, we're gonna add in this Kevin's all-purpose seasoning. I get this from Thrive Market, but feel free to just add salt and pepper. I just think this has such good flavor, and it works really well with literally almost everything that we make. Okay, so we're just gonna add in maybe a teaspoon or so. It's gonna add really good flavor. Whenever I make meatloaf, I do like to add in as many herbs and flavors as possible. So we're adding an Italian seasoning, probably a 1/2 teaspoon. I also like to add in garlic powder. Feel free to also add minced garlic if that's what you prefer. Let's go with, again, in between a 1/2 teaspoon to a full teaspoon, and the same thing with onion powder. That's a preference, teaspoon, 1/2 teaspoon. I do like to add just a squirt of yellow mustard. You can also add the stone ground, but this one was just right there available. This is literally like a teaspoon. And then, you know, I don't like ketchup, but I will eat it when it's mixed in with things. I add just about a teaspoon of that into the mixture as well. And then this, you cannot have it without the Worcestershire. Let's see. I usually go with at least a teaspoon, but sometimes it ends up being more. And this one is a very thick Worcestershire. I got a different brand this time. I mean, it tastes good, I like it, but it comes out of the bottle much slower than the ones I've used in the past. And I should probably just take the lid off. I will say that bottle is impressive though, because the other day I was cleaning out my fridge. If you follow me over on Instagram, you already know that. One of the shelves fell out as I was trying to take it out, and that and a bottle of oyster sauce fell. The oyster sauce broke all over the floor. That one was fine though, it didn't break. Typically at this point, I will mix all of this together, check its consistency, see how it is. Sometimes I'll end up adding some more oats, sometimes I'll add another egg. We just kind of see how it goes. And y'all, there are so many recipes for oatmeal. This really is a lot easier with your hands, by the way. But there are so many There are so many different recipes for meatloaf. If your grandma has the best recipe ever, please use just the best recipe ever that your grandma sent down to you. And you can pass that one my way if you want to. But this is one of those things where everybody has a different way that they make meatloaf. Go with it. It doesn't matter what way it is. It's more about the process of being able to use your crock pot and still make meatloaf in the middle of summer. I'm really, the spatial awareness, I think that's what you call it, spatial awareness, and like fitting things into a certain size container, things like that, planning food sizes and stuff. It's not my thing. I'm really not great at it. This is really it for this part. Now I am gonna make the stuff that goes on the top, but I'm gonna store that separately just because it's a little more convenient since we're taking it with us. So I'm gonna pour the whole mixture into this container that I can take with me. You could go ahead and form the loaf if you want to and store that, but I'm just gonna form it when I get there. It's no big deal. I just wanted to go ahead and make the mixture because otherwise I would have to take oats and ketchup and mustard and onion powder and garlic powder and all the things. So instead of doing that, it's just easier to make up the mixture. And drop the bowl. Good plan. Okay, speaking of spatial awareness, we're gonna use this size, but it's probably way too big. I'm going to add in ketchup. Let's do around a 1/4 cup or so. I also really like to add onion powder and garlic powder to this. It's more like a 1/2 teaspoon, maybe even a little less than a 1/2 teaspoon. I really could have put this in a smaller container. See, we were just talking about it. Friend to friend, y'all. Sorry, I'm just not good at this. Now, because I have barbecue sauce, I'm gonna add a little bit, but many times I have made this without barbecue sauce. I'm just adding, again, about a 1/4 to a 1/2 cup, something along those lines. It's never a perfect ratio for me. Never when I make meatloaf. It is always just kind of like toss it all in there and go. I do also like to add Worcestershire to this as well. And this is more like a 1/2 teaspoon. You don't need quite as much. And brown sugar. You gotta have brown sugar. 1/4 cup or so of brown sugar. Again, it's just, I don't really measure. It's just by looking at it. It seems like a lot of work to do all this right now rather than later, but it's a whole lot less that I have to pack and take with me, and then I get to just sit back and enjoy, but we can still have a nice home cooked meal, and it obviously saves tons of money too. All of these, obviously, you do not have to make ahead of time. You can make them right now if you want to. Add them to your grocery order, add them to your weekly menu. They do not have to be make ahead meals. It's just convenient that they are. Also, let's say you're not going on vacation and you just really like these kind of things, but you like the idea of making ahead. Well, then go ahead and make them ahead a couple of days early, and then you get to just sit back and chill for the rest of the week because your dinners are prepped and ready to go. So we're currently in the mountains, and let me show you exactly why I wanted to make all of these crock pot meals ahead of time, because I just want to sit and stare at this right here. I do not want to spend all of my time in the kitchen. So these crock pot meals are incredibly helpful for this week. Look how beautiful the scenery is. All right, let's take a break from just sitting and looking at the scenery, and we're going to line our crock pot with foil. This is actually the first time that I've ever done this, lined my crock pot with foil, so I'm interested to see how this is going to turn out. But we're going to take that meatloaf and I'm going to form it into that meatloaf shape and place it right into the crock pot on top of that foil. Now the foil is just going to help it transfer later on. We're not adding any water, no liquids to our crock pot, just that sauce that we made for the top of the meatloaf. I'm going to add half of it to the top of it right now, and we're going to turn this on high for 4 hours. We are taking the entire meatloaf out of the crock pot in the foil that I had it in there and setting it on a baking sheet. It's gonna go into the oven, and I'm gonna put a little bit more of that sauce on the top and then just put it under the broiler for maybe 3 to 5 minutes just to see if I can get that brown color on the top. This is completely optional. You do not have to do this. Look how pretty it is when it comes out of the oven. We're gonna slice this up and serve it. I actually pre-made mashed potatoes before I came up here, and our favorite side right now, which is this tomato cucumber salad that we have nonstop at this time of year. Let's talk about how easy this meatloaf was. I loved being able to put this in the crock pot and just leave it in there and not worry about it. And let me tell you, you do not have to put this in the oven and broil the top. I really don't know that that was necessary. I did it because we had the ability to, but if you don't even want to turn on your oven, I really don't think you're gonna miss this step. It turned out so good. The flavors were awesome. We actually had enough to have leftovers for lunch the next day. We only had enough for 2 of us to have that for lunch, and we had some other options. And we all kind of were fighting over who was gonna get the leftover meatloaf because the flavor was so good. I thought this was a fantastic way to make it. And honestly, moving forward, I'm not sure I'm gonna be using my oven for meatloaf anymore. This was so good. Our verse today comes from John 1:5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know we're getting close to fall, but it is definitely still really warm where we are, so we are using that crock pot whenever we have the ability. If you need more inspiration, check out the video above, and I hope you have a great week.